Okay, welcome back to another EDH deck design, or deck design video. Today I'm going to be re-recording my Rakka Mar deck. The original deck was posted like a couple months ago. I've built her a few times. The last time I've been building her like this current design, I've been capitalizing and creating an optimal token instead of mass tokens. But I've been essentially pimping this deck out for a while. I've always liked Rocco, and I've essentially taken apart a couple modern and one legacy decks, so I've had a lot of extra funds. So I've been pouring them into some of my other decks, so I'll be reposting a couple things shortly now that they have better cards. I'm going to try and make this video quick. I'm recording this on New Year's Eve. I'm probably going to get shit-faced in about 2 hours, so let's try and get this over with so I can go get trashed. Rakka Mar here is kind of a rare one. You don't see many people giving her much attention. Even in aggro decks, she may start in the deck, but she's just not good enough. As a general, although, she's something that's usually comparable to Kiki Jiki, where you tap to put a creature into play. While Kiki gives you a token of something already in play temporarily, she gives you a 3/1 haste elemental creature that stays in play. So it's like a spark elemental. It does not have trample though. But she herself has haste, just pays 1 red tap and does that ability. So she's 4/4/2/2 body. What I've done with this deck, although, is literally just try to make the tokens as strong and as powerful as possible. This deck is completely focused around Rakka's ability. It is terrible to tell that to the opponent because if she gets tucked, I essentially lose the game. There are some other ways of winning in the deck, very few other ways, because everything is essentially built around her. But let's go ahead and get through the deck. So she makes these tokens. Keep in mind that they are elemental, so there's lots of lord effects in here to make them bigger. She puts them into play, so there's some enter the battlefield effects that put them into play triggers. Let's stick that down here, and let's put Rock up here. There's slightly more creatures in the deck than there were from my original recording. So we're using the generic ramp ones, Burnished Heart. Pilgrim's Eye is kind of not ramp, but just to get us something. Adaptive Automaton is our first Lord effect. Essentially, I just choose Elemental, and all my Elementals get a +1/+1 boost. He comes out the turn before Rocco typically. Vishino Heretic is good early defense and kind of artifact destruction. Just a generically good mono red card to run. Same with Magus of the Moon, generically good mono red card to run. The Incandescent Soulstoke is our next lord. He also has a nifty sneak attack effect for elementals. If you did not see my previous deck, then you might not recognize the guy coming up called Nova Chaser. These are the only 2 elementals in the deck for an elemental tribal deck. This guy is 4/4/10/2 champion that tramples. I do have a Torpor Orb in the deck, so I may not have to champion. I usually use a token to champion, so I don't have to get rid of my only other elemental. But I can sneak attack this guy out, which is a very fun blow since there's things like a Warstorm Surge in the deck, and it checks his power upon entry, so he may be bigger, maybe more than 10 damage burn. There's just lots of fun things to do with these guys put together. But as another generic lord, he does make Rocca's tokens bigger. This is another lord in red. He's kind of new. I don't really care about the haste, essentially. The black one's pretty cool, but just essentially 4 mana for a lord. That is his entire purpose. Perforos is here to go with Rakka and her making tokens. I don't really care for him being turned online, but every single token burning all creatures for 2 upon entry is nice, especially when I start untapping Rakka and making more than 1 token a turn. It's a little out of order there, I guess. Solemn is more ramp, he should have been in the beginning. Horde Smelter Dragon is another artifact removal. I did want to put a couple things in here just in case Rakka herself got dealt with, or my board got dealt with. So Horde Smelter Dragon is just a good beater in the air, and I can destroy artifacts at instant speed. Just like him. Humoru is really good in the deck to give all my tokens Shivan Embrace. 6 mana for 4/4 that cannot block, but when he dies, I get an enchantment that gives all my creatures +2/+2 flying and fire breathing. Very, very powerful. Godo is here just to go fetch me up some kind of tech, like equipment for Rakka to double her ability or untap her. Duplicate is our best spot removal. And I'm still running all sorts of gauntlet effects, so I'm going to have lots of mana in the deck, so Cozy's there just in case, again, as an alternate win condition if need be. The draw 4 is more important on him than... I like Ulamog better, because I like destroying an indestructible, but the draw 4 in a mono red deck will always be more important. For actual removal, again, I didn't want to do too much that may hurt my token, so Mortars is there for the opponent. Blast Act, although, is a generic wipe. This will most likely become an All's Dust once I get a couple more. I'm missing like 3 index I need. Reiterate is one of my favorite mono red spells. Don't normally want to keep a lot of mana up in this deck since I'm just trying to make as many tokens as possible, but sometimes it's important to keep this up. Again, for artifact removal, permanently exiling them. Active Aggression is kind of our fog effect where I can snag a creature to block with. Ward of Sizing is again one of my favorite cards because I can take someone's Planeswalker that's about to ultimate. And Grab the Reins is our last theft effect, where again I can just take something, sack, and fling it. Savage Beating is usually the game-ending card in the deck. Even with just a small handful of tokens, with even the smallest of boosts in them, this can make a massive, massive win. Potential double turn, or double combat, double strike, or both. I'm only running just this one wheel in the deck. Need a bit more control, and I'm testing a few of my mono red decks without the Miracle Wheel, just to see exactly how it is. A lot of my cards in my deck I don't want in the graveyard. I don't have a Welder to help tech out the graveyard, so we're only running just this one this time. But I am doing mono red, so I like my Ruination effects. Let's go on to some of the more powerful parts of the deck. There's a few enchantments and just lots of artifacts here. Warstorm Surge is probably the best enchantment in the deck. It makes Rakka's tokens lightning bolts, essentially. Then again, this checks upon entry for the actual power. So if I have a Lord effect, it's not going to be 3 damage, it'll be more. Vicious Shadows is another game-ending card. If the opponents don't know what this does, it usually just ends games automatically. I do have a few sack outlets in the deck, so if my entire token army is maybe fogged out, or someone has defensive enchantments up where I have to pay to attack and I cannot attack, I can just start sacking them to burn people. Rage Reflection is just another game-ending card itself. Giving all my tokens double strike is very overwhelming. Same thing with Gratuitous Violence. I think I have the other damage doublers in here too. This one works on all my creatures only, but this works on everything. Like, for example, the Warstorm. Well, this works on Warstorm Surge too, because the creature does the damage. Is that right? Yeah, the creature does the damage from Storm. So this actually works with Warstorm Surge. This does everything for everybody's creatures too, so sometimes it backfires. But the actual cool thing with her tokens is you can be so lax with them since they're free. They're only just 1 mana. Sometimes it's better to be more chaotic and overwhelming with them than you would normally play. Mana Echoes is a very powerful enchantment with Rakka Mar. What it means is whenever a creature comes into play on any one side of the table, even like an opponent's, if I have a creature that shares a type with that, I get 1 colorless mana. So if I have Rock out and someone plays a Deathrite Shaman, I have a Shaman, I would get 1 colorless mana. If I have 3 elemental tokens and I make a 4th elemental token with Rakka, I would get 4 colorless mana. So this nets me lots of mana. This is also something that's usually immediately dealt with. There's not a lot of infinite combos with Rakka, but most of them do require this card. Blood Moon is there just to kind of nerf over the opponents. Not quite an enchantment, but Koth is just generically the best mono red walker that I like. I know a lot of people are enjoying Devri, or Derit, whatever the new guy is. I have a slight grudge against him because, number one, I don't hate cripples, I'm not making fun of that, but the fact that they took and created a new goblin that had an affinity for artifacts and they already had slow bad. Their defense was that slow bad died very quickly, although I'm pretty sure some of the characters that were also reprinted as planeswalkers or legendaries died also. Derit is Dereti, however you pronounce it. He's very good and powerful. I don't think he fits in this deck. But let's go on to the other giant stack of cards over here, the artifacts. I try not to do this, but mono red does really need a lot of artifact support to be consistently efficient. Running top just for that. I don't normally like top, but in this particular deck, I've been trying to just make it as good as it possibly can be, and setting up the draws for top is usually something necessary here. have a lot of ramp actually to help get her out as fast as possible. So we have my 2 1-drops, and then some of these 2-drops you usually see me play as well. The diamond, the heart actually gives me red mana, which is important with her. This one does not, just sacks itself. And Journeyer's Kite there is just there to help me get some extra lands back. It's kind of like an extra draw turn. The best thing to do, the hardest thing when it comes to trying to combo with Rakka, it's actually very hard to combo with her. You're in a caller that cannot tutor reliably. You're also in a caller that cannot recur things from the graveyard reliably and consistently. But there's a few things you can do. What we need for Rakka is red mana to tap and activate her. If that were colorless, this would be a lot easier. But because it requires red, we need something like this. Because I can take the Mana Echoes mana and store it on here and turn it to red mana later. What Gemstone Ray does is I can pay 2 to put a counter, remove a counter, add 1 mana of any color. So essentially it's a filter. I can pay 2 colorless mana to get 1 red mana, and I can store it. Again, this is something that usually gets dealt with very quickly because it looks like an obvious target. It kind of is an obvious target. Skull Clamp is another very obvious target. I mean, my elemental tokens, if I don't have a Lord effect out, become very, very good card advantage. Illusion's Bracers is something I really enjoy getting a copy of if I have my Sculpting Steel out, because with Rakka, I can make 2 tokens for 1 red mana. Umbral Mantle is another card that, again, something that you may need to combo with. Mana Echoes allows us to get the mana to untap Rakka almost infinitely, so we then need the red mana to make the tokens. So if I have Mana Echoes in like 4 elementals already, or just 3 actually, then essentially every mountain I have, I can create another elemental. I can make a very big army very quickly with these 2 in Rakka. But without the red filtering from the Gemstone Ray, I can't go infinite. But then the rest of this is just once per turn untap effects. Puppet Strings has 2 untap or tap creature, so I can pay 2 to untap her and get another one, or I can tap an opponent's creature that's about to kill me. 1,000-Year Elixir is very fun because I can do the sneak attack from the Soul Stoke at instant speed because this gives him a pseudo haste. But more importantly, I can just pay 1 and untap Rakka. I can pay 1 and untap Rakka. So essentially these extra cards are just to get an extra token per turn. I can pay 2 to get an extra token from Rakka. This also works on a few lands coming up, as well as the Koth and the mana artifact guys. Here's another way of getting red mana. If I had the Illusionist Bracers on Rakka, and I got 2 tokens for every activation, I could sack 1 for red. So if I had something like the Mana Echoes out, I could go infinite that way. This one, although does not give me colored mana, this gives me lots of colorless mana to work with, so this could help me get some of my tech online. Some of the Gauntlet effects, some of the artifacts, maybe even Kozilek if need be. While I do really like Warstorm Surge, as you're seeing, this is still a giant stack of artifacts. These are very susceptible to removal, so sometimes this is more important. The rest of these are kind of just the anthem effects to get the token army through. This wasn't something in my original deck list because I honestly just completely forgot it existed. Giving them all flying and indestructible and a small boost makes everything very resilient. This is something that should have honestly been in deck 0.1, like the very first thought of the deck. This should have been main decked, because the biggest fall apart of this deck is my army getting wiped. Bounced is one thing, but being wiped is another. Hallowed Triumph is still in the deck, just to give him a +1/+1 boost. Our Obelisk is there to give a nice +2/+2. The Convoke is very nice as well. Memorial is there just to force the army through. And Sculpting Steel is, while I like doing duplicates of things like Illusionist Bracers, I will most likely do duplicates of Gauntlet effects, actually. Because these effects give a boost, but also a mana boost. While the mana boost is nice, the Lord boost, the +1/+1 boost, is more important. And the last few are our draw stacks. We have Mind's Eye and Staff and In just for drawing. So that is a massive, massive chunk of artifacts. Again, I don't like doing that. It's necessary to make a strong competitive deck, but sometimes it just completely collapses when something like Aura Shard resolves. I think there's 37 or 38 lands in the deck currently. Again, if you see my mono red decks, you know I don't like a lot of non-basics. So we have the important one, something that helps us get some extra fast mana. This is a new one. I like doubling up on this with the Rings of Bright Hearth, because it not only replaces itself with a mountain, so I can play with the Valakut coming up, but I can double it up. Very good accelerant. But then there's the Valakut and Terrain Generator combo. The rest of these are my favorite little mountains from Kamigawa. I've been trying to collect just this artwork. I have almost the entire stack of them there. I'm missing about 5, but eventually these will all be foily. I just really like that work. John Avon, the artist here, he does most of the artwork of the mountains I tend to fall in love with. And most of the lands I fall in love with, I guess. But yeah, this is Rakka. I'm trying to remember how many times I've made her before I decided to do this kind of like token Lord effect build. Because she used to be in just kind of a generic combat deck. Honestly, Kiki Jiki is usually just a straight up better general to run in this style, because the decks are usually full of good stuff entry, whereas this deck requires Rakka. Very rarely will I be able to come back if I lose Rakka, unless I have like the mana to drop a Kozilek or something like that. Because even if she gets tucked, I don't have an Imperial Recruiter to go get her back. But yeah, this is Rakka Mar. Again, this is one of my favorite generals to run. She's just really nifty and exotic. Her story is also somewhat interesting. She was kind of one of Lord Bolas's little chess pieces in his grand scheme. Her card actually misrepresents her age, if I recall. In the storyline, the books there, she's a little bit older. Pretty sure she's dead too. But either way, she's an interesting general. If you're after a unique general and you really like mono red, I would suggest this, because the play style is very interesting and different. Most of the big fears of mono red is getting terribly kicked back from card disadvantage, not just 2-for-1, but having your board wiped from like a Bane of Progress. Being that you're making tokens and your board is consisting of tokens, it doesn't really hurt that much to lose all the tokens when you can just make more. I'm actually trying to have someone make me some custom tokens with the Forgeborn Oreeds artwork right now, because while these tokens are nifty, they don't really look good. I just don't like that artwork so much. But they're nifty. Oh, and when I run out of tokens, I only have like this many of the original tokens. I run Abra's. I like Abra. I don't like Pokemon too much, but Abra's always going to be the best. That's kind of nifty to go along with tokens that will most likely get board wiped or anything, because they just teleport away. Well, yeah. Recording this a little bit after Christmas, actually New Year's Eve. There's any new cards that come out, definitely let me know. Mostly I'm going to keep on looking for Lord effects to make the token army better and bigger and stronger. But yeah, any feedback, ideas, or if you ever played with Rakka, definitely let me know.